Back to My Garden, Episode 6.
Welcome to Back to My Garden. Discover your passion for gardening. Here's Dave Ledoux.
This episode of Back to My Garden brought to you by Coffee Royalty. Is it really possible to lose 5, 10, even 20 pounds or more just by changing your coffee or tea? Find out more at www.coffeeroyalty.com. Do you love gardening? Do you want to save time, save money, and increase your yields? Discover the secrets to an amazing garden. Receive tips, strategies, and techniques from master gardeners around the world. Join the VIP club at www.backtomygarden.com/VIP. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world when you hear this. I'm David Ledoux. Welcome to another edition of Back to My Garden, and today I got a good one for you, folks. It's pouring rain here in southern Ontario. We're going to one of the driest points in North America. They've only had rain once in a year. Our guest today is a lover of everything garden-related and do-it-yourself. Her motto is, if you can sow it, grow it. She learned her ABCs at an early age, which stands for always be creating. We share a mutual love for sunflowers. She's big on Instagram, Twitter, and the big announcement today about her upcoming TV show on the interwebs. Please help me welcome from Los Angeles, California, Cheli Cuevas. Cheli, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dave. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm excited to hear your stories about your gardening adventures, and our listeners are as well. Can you take just a minute and share with us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I grew up here in Southern California, and in the garden I grew up in, it was huge. And the previous owners to my parents, they traveled the world and collected seeds from all over the world, and they brought them back to the garden and planted them. So I grew up with avocados, kumquats, loquats, bananas, macadamia nuts, tangerines, oranges, plums, everything you can think of, it was at my disposal. And so gardening for me was always there. And, you know, you go to college, you grow up and you think, oh, you're not really into it anymore because your focus is on everything else going on. And I moved out, and when I had a garage sale, I met my fairy garden mother. And she sort of brought me back into the world of gardening, and ever since then, it's just been nonstop.
Fantastic. You know, a lot of our listeners are just envious right now because they live in parts of the world where growing a carrot is about all they can muster. And you're growing up with exotics, loquats.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy the amount of fruits and vegetables were at our disposal.
I find a common theme in talking gardening with people is they're exposed to it as a child. And then in the young adulthood, it's almost a stress or drama. It's, you know, everyone's too busy. And then comes the gardening moment. What was your first gardening moment? Do you remember what the first thing you started growing was as an adult?
I started off with succulents because we have very desert-like conditions here in Southern California. And I actually read on the Farmer's Almanac that succulents are a gateway plant. And it's true because it started off with succulents. And then I got brave enough to grow bulbs, flowers. And then that worked out. So I thought, let me try some other flowers. And I moved on to zinnias and sunflowers and what else? Just all kinds of, and now I'm onto vegetables, which is, that's the newest for me. And it's working. So the sky's the limit.
Fantastic. I walked out on our deck the other day. We have a container garden, and I saw something that didn't belong. It wasn't there yesterday. And it's a pot with chicks and hens in it.
Oh, I love those.
But I go, where the heck did this come from? And my wife has this, when she drives by a garden center, she just pops in to see what's going on. And she cannot leave a garden center without buying something. And that's our first succulent of the season. We got this teeny tiny chicks and hens.
I love it. I'm the same way. Every time I go to Lowe's, because that's my local store, my husband's always like, okay, I'll meet you in the garden section. I after work, I just pop in there just to walk through the garden section. I love it. It's very therapeutic gardening for me. And I live literally in the middle of this hustling, bustling city. I hear cars, there's ambulance, there's all kinds of noise around me. And I live in an apartment. My garden is in the apartment. And my landlords were nice enough to say, hey, this is all yours if you want it. So I was able to start my own garden in our apartment building. And it's incredible how many neighbors stop by and say, oh, I have, the bluest thumb of all. And I could never be a gardener. And I find myself literally giving them lessons.
I always start out these interviews with an agenda and notes. And we just derailed our notes because you are the perfect guest for so many of our listeners. They live in big cities, in apartments in cities like Tokyo, Scotland, in the big cities. You can totally relate and they can relate to you. Please share with us the challenges unique to apartment gardening.
Well, I'll tell you what, my garden is actually right next to the driveway. So, there are times when I'm doing a massive project and a car will need to get in. And so I'll need to move all my pots and put them back. But, my neighbors, they're really sweet. They understand and they're very appreciative because I'm doing something for the apartment building, and making it look nicer. It was literally a dry slab of neglected dirt. And now, I don't know, Dave, if you've seen the pictures of my garden on Twitter or Instagram, but I mean, it's gorgeous now. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I work really hard at making it a nice garden and it's definitely paid off. As far as challenges go, it's the California weather, the dry weather, that's definitely been one of the biggest challenges. As we don't get a lot of rain here. I do water frequently. However, there is a rule here I'm not sure if you know about. Here in Los Angeles, you can only water once a week. Yeah, legally. They'll fine you. Of course, people water more than once a week, just hoping no one catches them. But we do have a limit as to when we can water.
For those of you driving your car or riding your bike or jogging with your earphones and listening to this podcast, you have to check out Cheli's Instagram. It is a visual treat and you share a lot. I mean, it's really documented all the pieces and components. Head over to Instagram.com/GuildTheGarden. That's spelled GILDTHEGARDEN. And the Guild the Garden brand is a brand you're developing, correct?
Correct. I named it Guild the Garden because I'm not sure if you're familiar with the expression gild the lily.
Absolutely.
To embellish. And that's, if you've seen pictures of my garden, that's exactly what I did. I sort of embellished everything. It's not just a regular garden. It's, I have a ladder turned into a plant stand. I have tipsy-turvy planters. It's kind of like, Mad Hatter, my garden.
When I was looking at your Instagram, do you have a background in photography or are you using some special camera?
You know what? I use my phone.
Excellent.
I use my phone and it has these really cool features on it. And no, I do not have a background in photography. But I'm really glad to hear that. That means I'm doing something right. Well,
and not one photo is your thumb in the corner. And so that's why I asked, because I have a You mentioned your neighbor with the blue thumb. My thumb ends up in all my photos. You got a new Facebook fan page also under the Guild the Garden banner. You've got Twitter at Guild the Garden. Do you want to take a minute and talk about your new project that's coming out on YouTube?
Yes. It sort of happened organically by any means. As I was mentioning earlier, I have neighbors coming over asking me for tips. I'm sharing plants with neighbors. I have the neighbors next door. They'll bring me their succulents and I'll give them something I have. And we exchange seeds. And, my other neighbor is part of the the Succulent and Cacti Society of California. Yeah. So we share stories together, and it's just such a great experience that I thought, I would love for people who live in apartment buildings and think that they can't have a garden to have a garden. So basically what my show is, it's for people who don't know how to garden. They're just starting off. Excuse me. We're going to talk about a lot about container gardening and working with small spaces and doing little DIY projects for your garden along the way. And it's going to be fun. I'm really excited.
YouTube.com, and they'll search for Guild the Garden.
Correct.
Is there a place where they can send you their questions?
Oh, absolutely. Definitely to my Facebook page.
Okay.
To my Facebook page. And I'm going to have a Gmail set up once the show is rolling, which will probably be in August. I'm shooting my first 4 webisodes in 2 weeks. So it'll probably go live in August, and then they can send any questions to guildthegarden@gmail.com.
For those of you listening 10 years into the future, do you have flying cars yet? Because it's going to be live, so you can go right over to YouTube right now. By the time you hear this, we are live, and Cheli's YouTube channel will be live, so head over there, check it out. Make sure you subscribe. YouTube will push you all the updates, and you'll be able to leave comments, vote it up, share it on Facebook and Twitter. Remember the importance of the social community and help her launch her webisodes. It's very exciting.
Thank you so much. And I'm all for, people building their own gardens. It's a beautiful thing.
Try to remember a time when you weren't gardening and you're living in downtown, you're in LA. LA has the population of some small countries, Australia. It's probably nearly the population of Australia in one giant city. How has your life changed because of gardening?
That is a loaded question. It's changed significantly. It has just helped me quiet the noise inside and outside. I mean, when I'm in my garden, I am just in my garden, and there's nothing that can take me away from it. And I really have literally stopped to smell the roses. It's made me appreciate the birds and the bees working so hard to pollinate, and the importance of butterflies. And I find caterpillars in my garden, and it's just, there's so much noise in life with work and friends and this and that. And when I'm in my garden, it's not there. I'm just literally in nature, planting seeds. Watching the life cycle of a sunflower is quite possibly the most beautiful thing. It makes me cry. I'm sure you can relate to that, Dave.
When I lived in the big city, it's not uncommon to live in the same apartment or townhouse or suburb for 5 years and not know your neighbors. Except for gardeners. When you give someone a heirloom tomato or a zucchini or a flower, a conversation breaks out and you develop a new friendship. Has it been like that for you in Los Angeles?
Oh, you have no idea. The gardening for me and my neighbors, I was able to meet several neighbors just by seeing them water their garden or they see me watering my garden. I can't tell you how many people walk by and say, I love your garden, and I have no idea who they are. And then we strike up a conversation. There's a neighbor down the street that I've been monitoring their little patch of dirt. They plant pumpkins, they plant wildflowers. And every time I pass by, even though we don't know each other, I say, hey, I love your wildflowers. I love your this. And, the other day the neighbor said, oh, well, I'm growing sunflowers next. And I said, well, hey, I've got some seeds for you from my Mammoth. So, I brought him over the seeds, and it's a beautiful thing, mingling with neighbors and having this same common ground.
You mentioned the Mammoth. I love sunflowers. I have a bunch of Mammoths in my garden this year. You have a Mammoth story to share. Please go ahead. Walk us through what happened, the good points and the bad points.
Okay, well, my husband was so scared it wasn't going to work, because I put so much, emphasis on this growing these sunflowers. I was really excited about it, and he was really worried it wasn't going to work, and I was going to be really sad. So I planted about 20, and only one grew. And I don't know, it could have been a number of reasons. I had a slug problem that I solved with beer, but that's neither here nor there. And one survived. And I always told him, I said, at least one will survive. Don't worry. And one did. And she grew, and she grew, and she grew. And, her face was just the prettiest face. And you can see photos of her on Instagram and all that, and Facebook. And I literally would wake up in the morning and go by and scratch her little head. And the neighbors would walk by. I would take a picture with everybody who came around to the apartment building. I'd say, take a picture with the sunflower. So the one sunflower just became this almost human-like. And she gave me some seeds. She's no longer with us. However, there's several sunflowers on this growing from the same stalk, and it doesn't stop. I love it. And she was able to give me about 100 and something seeds just from her. And she didn't grow to full Mammoth size, by the way, because sunflowers, they need a lot of room to grow for the roots. And where I planted her, I don't think the dirt goes that far down. So she only grew to about, I would say 4.5 feet, whereas they normally grow to, 8 feet. They're pretty tall, but I don't think she had enough roots to, fully reach her potential, but she did, and in her 4.5 feet, and it was beautiful. And I just harvested her seeds last week, so now I have a bunch of little babies to plant.
Fantastic. All documented on Instagram.
Yeah, it is actually. And I can't wait to post the full picture from seed to full growth to harvest. That's something I haven't done yet, but coming soon. And I just want to tell you a quick story, Dave. Yesterday, because I've had some neighbors saying, oh, have you seen the Mammoths? They're huge. They're down the street on San Vicente. And so I walked over there yesterday, and a storefront planted about 20 American giants and Mammoths, and they're huge. They're probably about 9 feet tall, and they're so pretty. And what was just an ugly sidewalk with cars passing by has now become this beautiful home for, 20 sunflowers. It's a beautiful sunflower garden, and I love seeing things like that. People improving their city just by planting little seeds on the street.
That's so profound, that statement, what you just shared, is the beautification of the urban spaces just by a few people with a bit of imagination. And nature does pretty much all the rest. Talk to me a little bit about what your garden is like today.
She is at her peak. I'm growing, right now I'm growing garlic. I'm growing green onions. And this is all from posts that I've seen, blogs and, other garden videos and such, about buying vegetables from the store and being able to root them just from a store-bought vegetable and grow them. So this is something I'm experimenting with right now, and it's working. I just planted a garlic bulb from the store, and it sprouted in a week.
Well, let me interrupt. You just went to the store, you bought a bulb of garlic. Did you put it in wet paper towel or just stick it right into a pot?
I just stuck it right into the dirt in a pot, and after a week, and it's funny because all my neighbors were laughing. They said, "Oh, it's not going to work," because they happened to be there when I was doing it, and they thought, "No, you can't do that." And sure enough, after a week, it was poking its little head, the sprout.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's something I'm experimenting with. I have a ton of flowers growing right now. I just planted buttercups and alliums, and I've got latana growing. Man, that's a great ground cover. If you have an ugly dry patch, plant some latana and you'll have beautiful purple or whatever the kind you have. They have yellow, orange. I have sunflowers. I moved some pots and some new sunflower sprouts popped up. So I have about 6 mammoths growing. And I guess they were seeds that were covered up that I forgot about. And I sort of rearranged my garden and they popped up. So I've got 6 mammoths growing. I still have the same mammoth, other sunflowers growing on that same stalk. It's pretty wild.
In such a challenging climate too, you have to do a little bit of planning ahead, don't you, to deal with the drought?
It's not only the drought, it's just so happens that half of my garden is clay soil. So that's been a challenge as well. But oddly enough, the sunflowers are growing in the clay. And, I know you need well-drained soil for sunflowers, but they're doing pretty well. And
the sunflower, it's a target in the spring of all the chipmunks, mice,
really,
rabbits. My sunflower, they grow 8 to 10 feet, but every September, you'll see something blue hanging upside down from the heads. And the blue jays will not touch the sunflowers till September. And then it's just a daily battle to keep them away.
Oh, wow. Wow. I've never heard of that.
Yeah. And you just see this blue thing hanging upside down from the head, munching away on 3.5 months worth of work.
Oh, I am so sorry to hear.
Living in a city, you have your challenges with your garden, and the prevalent one I hear from a lot of people is deer, rabbits, skunks. In Los Angeles, it's drought, clay. Do you have any pests?
Slugs. Oh, gosh, I cannot stand the slugs. So I went online and did a little research on the best way to get rid of them because I didn't want to harm. I have a cat. I didn't want to harm my cat. She goes in my garden, and I certainly don't want to harm any. I have my neighbor brings over her 1-year-old, and I don't want him picking up any slug killer and eating it. So I try to research organic methods of killing them, and I found beer. Are you familiar with this, Dave?
Let's pretend I'm not. I'd love to hear your beer recipe for slug killing.
Well, apparently slugs are raging alcoholics and they love beer. And I set out a little bowl just with beer, enough to where, they can crawl in. I certainly didn't want to waste a whole thing of beer on slugs. So I set it out. I wasn't sure if it was going to work. Literally the next morning, I come out and I set out several traps. There were about 20 slugs to each trap.
Wow.
They crawl in and they drown. They're attracted to the carbohydrates in the beer. And so you just put a bowl of beer wherever you can see that they're eating your plants, the roses or the sunflowers or anything that has holes in the leaves. You set it right there, and I guarantee you'll have some slugs in the morning.
Man, that's fantastic tip. Dropping the wisdom. That's good stuff. Slugs are a big deal.
As far as snails, I've seen photos where they'll go in there as well. I didn't catch any snails, which I'm kind of glad because they're cute.
Yeah, they have a purpose. The birds like them.
Exactly. So I handpick the snails and I just sort of move them to another area where they can't harm my plants.
You know, Cheli, the half hour goes by so quick, and we're at the time now in the podcast where we get to play my